Hello and welcome to the I-League Season 2 Southeast Asia Qualifiers. I'm Genysis. I'll be joined by Mike Loris for a best-of-3 series between MVP.Hot6 and Genysis.
Should be pretty interesting. Have seen both of these two teams play before, even though we don't really get to watch too much of the Southeast Asian scene. MVP.Hot6, definitely the weaker of the two, I believe, MVP teams, at least the two notable ones. Didn't really do that hot in MPGL, but the only thing I've seen of Genysis is a two-game best-of-3 where they just got completely stomped by Team Malaysia. That being said, it was Team Malaysia, so I guess it's kind of acceptable, but still, both teams, I would say, from what I've seen, fairly even skill level, so it should be pretty good regardless.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, that was Team Malaysia with Mushi, and we're just of a different caliber than the different Southeast Asian teams. For now, the draft is actually progressing fairly slowly, with both teams taking their time with these first couple of bans. We'll see Naga Siren as well as Elder Titan and Ogre Magi taken out of the pool.
And the two games I've seen of Genysis, the Elder Titan was the pickup for them, and it worked pretty well, just getting a massive amount of damage through PA. Well, you never could be too upset about when your crits hit for 1,020 something minutes into the game. Seems pretty good to me, though it's not going to be an option. Siren and the Death Prophet going to be banned out by Genysis. I think the Siren probably more so than anything, just a comfort ban for them, as it's usually here that teams are letting through, but sometimes you just don't want to be dealing with the rat game. And you know what, Genysis? I approve of it.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those really annoying heroes that nobody really wants to deal with. And even in a game that you're comfortably winning, you always have that nagging thought in the back of your head that, oh my goodness, we have a Naga Siren. Maybe they'll be able to split push this one to victory. So we'll just have to see. Hot6, they're going to go ahead and snag up the Brewmaster first. Genysis will go for the Centaur. And well, after the Centaur, I think Scarth Mage is a logical follow-up to that. But maybe they have something else in mind since they aren't picking up instantly.
And that is the most common, the easiest pick to make if you are Genysis, and there they are going to make it. So that's probably the best two heroes you could pick up in order to deal with the Brewmaster. You have Answers pre-split and you have Answers post-split, and then well, of course you have to answer him in lane as well. But you could pick those up a little bit later. This is I probably think the best way to open up against Brewmaster. It's really simple. It kind of drives itself. So. I don't see any reason why Genysis shouldn't go for it, and apparently neither do they. For MVP, they're just going to have to deal with this. This is the downside of picking up Brewmaster first, is that you will have to deal with your split being countered in some way, shape, or form. And they are going to be able to work around it for sure, but that just means that they're going to have to prioritize disables, AoE, ways to keep the enemies locked down even though they may stampede, and there's a good one right there.
Yeah, it's going to be the Ravage for them. A lot of big teamfight ultimates coming out from either side, but MVP.Hot6 right now have a slight initiation edge just with the double blink initiation, but both teams are getting quite a bit out of this first picking and banning stage. Yeah, as far as what's left in the pool that either team really need to pick up, there isn't anything that comes directly to mind just because of how good these ultimates and the utility that all these heroes bring to the team is.
Well, second ban's out. We have Ember Spirit going to be a rather early ban for MVP, and you usually nothing indicates, or not much indicates, that a team is going to be going for a hero like Ember Spirit, except for if you yourself don't want to go for a whole lot of disable. With Ravage being the only stun that MVP are currently working with, it is likely that they are just planning on not picking up that many stuns or not many crowd control effects down the line. Of course, the Ember Spirit really good against Brewmaster's splits, and so you just stampede away and then you could fire or jump away. So that's a pretty nice counter in and of itself. But the MVP, they already have two strength heroes. They got to be careful about not crowding their lanes.
Yeah, they definitely do. As far as picks for Genysis, if this isn't going to be another core ban, and if it is, I think Morphling would be a pretty good one. Excuse me. But if it is going to be a support, Genysis, Sand King would work really well with what they've already brought to the table. A whole lot of Magic Burst, as well as another way to initiate team fights on their own terms. So that could be a useful pick. MVP.Hot6 are definitely taking quite a bit of time in the second picking stage. Yeah, so we'll have to see. They're going to ban out the Slark, which is a really solid carry in his own right, so definitely worthy of the ban.
And it's kind of in the same line as the Morphling and the Ember Spirit, just a very elusive hero. Could deal a lot of damage if you give him any sort of space, and if you don't have stuns, then he's going to completely destroy your team, pretty much no questions asked For Genesis, the Terror Blade ban, I think it's another just overall ban off of strength, in that he will be able to do a lot of damage pretty much no matter what. Even though Genesis already have two really great heroes versus the Terror Blade, um, I guess it's another one of those comfort bans. Seems like Genesis just have a little bit of hate for those late game carry heroes and the heroes that could split push as well. So that's perfectly fine. It lets them play a little bit more of a direct approach, but they're using that direct approach into a Ravage and into a split. So, yeah, good luck making that happen.
Yeah. Well, for now, we'll have to see what Genesis's actual approach is going to be to this game, and there are options for them as far as direct ways to fight into that, but it's not very great. Um, so yeah, we are going to see Wraith King from them. Nothing too surprising just yet. I don't know. Wraith King is kind of a lukewarm hero right now, but if you are dealing with these big one-cycle ultimates like the Brewmaster Split and the Tidehunter Ravage, if you die once, it doesn't really matter all that much because you'll be able to come in with the second life and not have to worry about them.
Between Wraith King and Centaur War Runner, the Genesis side in general is going to be rather bulky, kind of to match the MVP's bulky side. I would say both teams right now don't really have enough damage to kill off one another, at least fast. So it might just be getting into one of these situations where it's just a really long, drawn-out slugfest. Wraith King and Brewmaster are really good in those situations because of their passives or then their low cooldown skills. But MVP, they're going to pick up some of their supports now. Vengeful Spirit going to be the first one to match up against the Scarith Mage. They were light on stuns. Now they have at least something. And their minus armor is actually starting to stack up. They now have two forms of minus armor. And if the enemy team is really tanky, then just burn all their armor and then kill them.
Yeah, and even if they just keep the minus armor exactly where it is, taking Roshan's going to be pretty easy. Pop the Lincoln's effect on Roche with the magic missile, then gush him, Wave of Terror. And with Drunken Haze, it's a pretty easy Roshan to take as well. It doesn't really matter exactly what their safe lane farmer is going to be. Genesis, they'll go for that Sand King I was talking about earlier, so we are going to see a safe lane farming or otherwise farming Wraith King.
So we have the two supports from Genesis, Sand King, Scarith Mage. As far as their ability to go around and kill people, well, first of all, it's going to be hard to kill the Tidehunter Brewmasters because they're so big. Vengeful Spirit's certainly very vulnerable. This combo is not the strongest, but certainly can get the job done. Wraith King in the farming role, if he's in the lane or if Centaur's in the lane that Scarith or Sand King are ganking into, then they'll be working with a whole lot of stuns. Concussive into Burrow Strike into Hoof Stomp or Wraithfire Blast to open it up. And MVP are going to be on the receiving end of quite a bit of pain. They have a Witch Doctor to try to mitigate that pain, but still I'm concerned that MVP don't quite have enough damage to really get things done until they actually drop their ultimates.
Yeah, definitely, and they're probably going to have to if they really want to take the engagements, and I think that is going to come back to the Wraith King issue, especially if Wraith King's able to get up level 11 and 16 pretty early on. He's going to be really problematic for them to deal with. The level 1 ultimate cooldown is something that MVP.Hot6 can work around, but when you're getting a reincarnation every 60 seconds, I don't think they have the damage to kill him every time, and Wraith King could just get incredibly stacked. Genesis, although they have really big ultimate cooldowns, they don't rely on them as much. Blink Burrow Strike, Blink Hoof Stomp, they still do quite a bit, but Tidehunter is incredibly tied down to that Ravage cooldown, and there's really no way to fix that. Except for a Refresher Orb, but that's not going to be coming until very late along the line.
Yeah, it's kind of unavoidable right now for MVP that they are going to be reliant on their ultimates. So if they win a team fight, they have to win it really, really well and then take objectives thereafter, because once Genesis respawn, then they are, as you said, not really as reliant on their huge AoE ultimates, and they will be able to take fights in between the split, in between the Ravage and the Death Ward cooldown, and that's just going to be a problem for MVP. They won't really have anyone to fight. They need someone, a core, who could fight often and consistently. This might be a Medusa game. They have, I think, enough protection for her, and they have enough AoE in order to keep her safe. It's not really here that gets shut down too much by the silences and stuns either. So, yeah, Dusa seems pretty fine here. I wouldn't really recommend Morphling because there is so much stunning action and so many ways of controlling him on the Genesis side. But if they really wanted to, they could also go down that route. But for Genesis, that's a lot of damage right there, Invoker. And I really like Genesis's lineup. It's a little bit melee heavy for my taste. But you know what? They have a whole bunch of stuns. They have good setup for Sunstrike. I think their lineup is pretty well rounded.
Yeah, it definitely is. They can play the lanes pretty passively, but immediately once they get the Blink Daggers, on at least the Centaur and the Sand King, finding kills is just going to be so easy for them. They have a lot of different ways to start the fights off, especially if there's a Blink Dagger on Wraith King as well. MVP.Hot6, if one of them's missing from the map, it doesn't necessarily look very imposing, but there's always the threat that you'll just have them blink on top of you, stun you, and then you have a Sunstrike flying. There's not really much you can do about that. For MVP.Hot6, they don't have a lot of time to consider this last pick. And if they pick up the Medusa, Invoker is also pretty nice because they'll just go for Quas Wax. It's going to be a Templar Assassin, so they are going to hammer that minus armor pretty heavily.
It is that hero that can fight pretty often, pretty consistently. As far as Genysis' ways of burning through the Templar Assassin shield, they don't really have that many ways that are great. Wraithar Blast is easily disjointable by meld of Templar Assassin, sees that one coming. Sand King, I guess Sandstorm, maybe you could consider that a way, that you probably shouldn't. Skywrath Mage also has the Flare, which is going to burn through that shield pretty quickly. Invoker, of course, will have a whole slew of things, but I think MVP, they have enough minus armor already on their team to justify this Templar Assassin. Of course, minus armor loves more minus armor, and it has to be them taking control of the game early on, or at least taking control of the game in a big way once they get their ultimates up. If they sit on their Ravage once Tide hits level 6, if they don't use the first Brewmaster split until Brew is level 11, then things are going to get pretty bad for them.
Definitely. We'll have to see if they're going to be able to keep up with the tempo that they've kind of set for themselves. But for now, we're going to go ahead and introduce the teams. On the Radiant side, it's going to be Genysis, with Bryant playing on that Sand King. Skywrath Mage going to be handled by Quadruple A. Nana on the Invoker. Vexus on the Wraith King. And Centaur towards the offlane, played by Andy.
And for MVP, it's going to be Raji going to be playing the Templar Assassin. Sunbi is going to be playing on the Brewmaster. Jubei handling Tidehunter with Dubu on the support Vengeful Spirit. That leaves Nuts on the Witch Doctor. They're smoked up and they're heading down towards the bottom lane. And Genysis, they are also going to be in the bottom lane. Invoker level 1, pretty bad. Centaur level 1, pretty bad because he's not here. So this could work out very well for MVP if they find someone. They're leading with the cask, although their smoke is going to be blown and Vexus is going to see them, or is he? Yes, he's now going to see them for sure. Are they really going to dive this? Because they don't have that many ways of closing the distance right now. They have boots on the Witch Doctor, but Nuts is in the back, so this smoke is not going to work out very well. MVP not exactly hugging the corners as tightly as they needed to.
Yeah. It's not going to cost them much, and they can still drop a couple of wards. Blocking off the pole camp, it's a pain to deward this camp, and we'll have to see if the supports are actually going to be able to connect with that. And they'll also block the large camp away from the Sand King. Currently his jungle has been heavily invaded. Usually Sand King can find a very fast Blink Dagger. This game might not be as fast, but unless they refresh the sentries or commit more to invading his jungle, he's still going to be able to get a decent amount of farm. But I like the move of just dropping that 200 gold.
I'm pretty sure this sentry is just not going to be realized. Usually the way to block this camp, you put the ward down here, you put it over here. It's not really often that you see it in that spot, so Genysis might end up botching this first ward placement. They're first of all going to put a very defensive Observe ward near their mid lane. They're expecting a lot of rotations from the bottom lane. They're going to try to protect this, dual lane of Wraith King and the Skywrath Mage. This is, I would say, a pretty decent way of shutting down the Templar Assassin. Certainly not the combination that immediately comes to mind, but because they have the Invoker, I think this is justifiable. These lanes are probably the weirdest that you're ever going to see.
Yeah. And speaking of the Invoker, he's currently top lane up against the Tidehunter, expecting MVP to go for a straight up aggressive tri-lane or just dual lanes like they do have set up right now. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that nobody really expects these lanes going into the draft, at least I wasn't. But I think it is going to work out decently well for Genysis. Invoker can handle the Tidehunter solo pretty easily. Skywrath Mage Harass is not that great up against the Templar Assassin since she does have refraction to deal with it a little bit. But at the early levels, a couple of right clicks here and there, and you can still throw Arcane Bolts. And there's always a little bit of a threat of killing potential as long as the Wraithfire Blast connects. So Raji isn't going to be getting as much farm as he probably should. But for now, he's getting enough up against a dual lane. But the Wraithfire Blast flies, eats an Arcane Bolt to the face. And now Raji going to be forced to eat through all of his regen. That doesn't matter very much because he does have the bottle flying through.
Once he gets his meld, he'll be able to dodge those, assuming no silence beforehand. Raji is in a little bit of trouble, as Templar Assassins normally are in lane, but I think he should be able to overcome it. Down towards the bottom lane, we have a brawling lineup for Genysis. Two melee heroes, both with stuns. Of course, Sand King, though he does have boots first, he is only working with level 1 Burrow Strike, which is a terrible skill. So he's going to be at the mercy of Nuts. The Centaur is going to be at the mercy of Nuts as well. Sunbee has an Orb of Venom. He doesn't have boots just yet, but once the Brewmaster does, then this lane, I think, is just going to be straight out won by MVP. There is a chance of them getting into a fight and them being over their heads, but for the most part, it should be won by MVP unless some Sunstrikes land. Nana with 2 points of Exhort already and is doing pretty well at running this top lane, as to be expected versus the Tidehunter. He could be able to contribute a lot, and he's going to be the X factor, I think, in the other two lanes. Depending on how well the Invoker does, the other two lanes are going to be doing that much better or that much worse.
Yeah, right now, Brian, with that Illusion Rune, is going to at least spend one of them to stack up a camp, which is incredibly useful for him. The sentries that were blocking the camps earlier on are about to wear off as well, so Brian is going to be able to fall back into the jungle as soon as he gets level 3, and since this is dual lane, that's going to be coming up pretty shortly. Vengeful Spirit up towards top, dropping low, not exactly sure what to. Potentially just pulling the camps a little too aggressively, but will offer some help to the Tidehunter. Although I think the damage is pretty much done. Nana is not going to be shut down, even with Venge here.
Yeah, they can shut him down. Oh, wait, Raji on the mid lane is going to get jumped first. Silenced up. It has a meld now in a fraction. Silence is worn off. Raji close to death, but not quite dead yet. They can kill off this Invoker should they pick up Gush and a Magic Missile. Once that happens, then it's possible to get the kill, although still it's going to be very, very hard. The Invoker is not going to be packing Ghost Walk for quite a long time, so maybe he's going to get a little bit too comfortable in lane, and maybe that will result in his death. But for right now, it's Raji to get probably the lowest end of this stick. Wraith King is free farming the mid lane, and it's not often that I get to say that, but he is doing pretty well for himself. On top of the last hit chart, followed by the Invoker. Unfortunately, the Centaur is not keeping up at all, and you can't really expect the Centaur to keep up being harassed out by the Witch Doctor 24/7.
Yeah, but then again, that's okay. As long as he gets his level 6, he at least has some way to initiate. He's not as tied down to the Blink Dagger as a lot of other offlaners, or generally laned as offlane heroes, but it's still a huge leap in power for Andy, and he'll get it eventually, although not as fast as maybe the Wraith King, or even the SK, as Brian is going to be able to farm with that jungle. Still not level 3, it's going to be first blood on the Venge, actually, a Sunstrike kill, and now TP away by Nana. He's going to make it out alive. I was not expecting that Venge to die, but she was farming pretty aggressively, and it looks like just a pretty easy Sunstrike kill.
Yeah, Venge should not be dying in this lane at all, but mid lane Raji's going to get hit with the Burst Strike now on top of everything else. To have a Sentry as well, and with a couple more right clicks, it's going to be the death of the Templar Assassin in the mid lane. Already 2-0 lead for Genysis. MVP not off to a roaring start, though their CS is fine. It's still first blood being lost in a lane that should not be dying pretty much at all versus just one hero like this. And then losing a Templar Assassin to boot, and that's going to give Sand King a little bit more experience. Now level 3 has a 1-2-3, will be 4 stack of the hard camp, and with level 2 Sandstorm, that camp isn't really going to last that long at all. So Sand King going to hit the jungle now, and probably isn't going to show his face for quite a long time. Still, the Centaur isn't really doing that well, but I think a kill in the mid lane, kill on the top lane, and what, another kill on the top. Okay, I'm just going to stare at this Invoker for 24 hours because this lane is not going as it should.
No, Invoker is just finding kills where I thought there were none to be had. Sunstrike does do 225 pure damage, which is nice and all, but they will find themselves a jump on a mid. It's not really going to be that impactful as Vexus is able to bottle up, and with the Haste Rune, the Skyrath is going to be just fine. But still, they're going to return with Fire Blast onto Raji, eating through the refraction charges slowly, but they can't actually go for that any further. Raji is going to be just fine. Still, both teams trading blows, and the Invoker absolutely crushing his lane. 26 and 5 and getting 2 solo kills. He's going to be working towards a Midas, and he'll get that very soon.
You know what I said before about his impact on this game? Oh wait, hold on. Andy is going to get jumped on down towards bottom. Hoof Stomp is going to land, but Cask and Anchor Smash, way too much sticking power from the MVP side here. Centaur will be going down. The Invoker I was talking about before, it only really applies if he is not getting solo kills. If he's getting solo kills, then it's fine no matter what. But Raji, I think, is going to get a kill on the Courier in the middle lane as he just gets it with, I guess, the cleave damage. Yeah, and Vexus ends up... Well, he does have his bottle, so that's nice, but still not the best of times for the Wraith King right now.
Absolutely. It's not really expected for these kills to happen. This one is, however. Silenced up, Sunstrike flying through with no refraction. Easy kill onto the Templar Assassin. Not much you can do there, just going to be cratered.
And Nana's going to collect his third kill of the game. Has a hand of Midas already waiting to fly out to him right now. Unfortunately, Courier dead. So even though it's going to hurt the entirety of Genysis, it's going to be hurting this Invoker just a little bit more. A 7-minute Midas versus a 9-minute Midas. That's 1.5 usages of that item. So it's going to be hitting him pretty hard. And he really doesn't want to run back for that item. That's going to mean the Sand King is going to have to ferry it out. So, Sand King, you're demoted. You are now a courier.
Yep. In the meantime, tier 1 tower down in bottom's going to fall to the Tidehunter. The Centaur couldn't do much in this lane, but he is being brought into mid. They're going to go in Raji. Concussive shot, dusted up. There's not going to be any melds. The Sunstrike flies through, doesn't land on anything. Maybe it takes off a refraction charge, but now Raji getting some backup. Paralyzing Cask bounces back and forth to heroes, and it is going to get pretty good chain stun. Vex is going to lose his ultimate. Everybody's slowed. Andy trying to run out of there alive. Looks like he is going to survive that. Excuse me, Maldic just isn't high enough. Leveled. Nuts is going to be cold snapped up, dropping low, very low HP here. They just need one auto attack or anything to kill him off, but it just won't be there. The spill damage on the Invoker is pretty significant, but he should be able to survive as well for now. Nobody's actually falling, just traded blows.
Until the Sand King comes in with the haste rune, maybe he's going to make something happen. No, just wants to deliver. Just wants to deliver that Midas. Okay, that's fine as well. Haste delivery, I suppose, is really nice. Got to get that speed burst. MVP, unfortunately, the way they fought that fight, not saying that they could have done anything about this because they couldn't have, but the Thunderclap from the Brewmaster ended up letting everyone else from Genysis get away because it ended up killing the Wraith King. It slowed all of them down, and if they didn't have that slow, they could have gotten so many more kills, but sometimes it's just the way it goes for the Brewmaster. He does have his Blink Dagger, however. Didn't quite use his split there because everyone was so far away already. Couldn't really get into the middle of everything, but still, if he is able to make good of that split, then MVP, they could start digging themselves out from the hole that they've so far found themselves in. Tidehunter is also farming pretty decently towards his Blink Dagger, so once these ultimates for MVP start flying, then Genysis, their 3-kill advantage isn't really going to mean that much, and they're going to spot out Jubei. Coming from the side, Bryant going to have a couple of his creeps jacked right now, a little bit further away from his Blink Dagger than he would like to be, and he doesn't really have any options right here because MVP, they are pushing with two very big ultimates in backup.
They are, and those are the split and the Ravage, and this is a pretty crucial time for MVP. They're going to pop a trap and just clear up this creep wave. Genysis, they have heroes in reserve, but they don't really want to fight now. The Sand King still only about halfway towards his Blink Dagger since he hasn't been able to farm the jungle as much as he'd like to. And it's going to be MVP to take the second tier 1 tower of the game. Giving them a little bit of boost in this portion is pretty useful for them. Stampede is available for the Centaurs, so even without jump split on the backlines, they found themselves quadruple A, trying to use the Stampede, but it's just sunlocked for too long. Epicenter going to be cancelled, by the Paralyzing Cask bouncing through, and that's going to be an easy double kill. Now triple as Andy falls to the Templar Assassin. Invoker flying through the air, and Vexus being able to escape on the sidelines, but now Invoker drop back down into a Magic Missile Meld Strike. That's going to be the end of Invoker's life, and a quadruple kill. Looking for Vexus even further. Ultimate on cooldown for 115 seconds. They almost have the damage, and they do, as Vengeful Spirit Mop set up with another auto attack. MVP are going to find themselves a crushing victory, a 5-0.
Yeah, so they got pretty much all the kills that they could have wanted, and that was also a 4 versus 5 team fight. Jubei was farming on the bottom lane, so they didn't have Ravage there, no Anchor Smash, no Gush, no nothing from this Tidehunter. He's found himself his Blink Dagger, but man, that split positioning from Sunbi was so sneaky and so perfect. He got himself into this little corner of the trees. No one could actually see where he was, and once they saw him, he was already split. So there was no chance for them to disengage once that actually happened. Fortunately for Genysis, they're going to, well, dust up, and then they'll get the tower denied. But man, they just get completely wiped off the face of the map in a 4 versus 5 situation. That is pretty much to be expected with the power of the Brewmaster ultimate, assuming he gets a good one. And it pretty much doesn't really get much better than that. He didn't even need his Blink Dagger to initiate there.
No, definitely not, and it's going to be exactly what the doctor ordered for MVP. This is what's going to keep them in the game if they're able to work around these ultimates, and GB with that Blink Dagger. Ravage is the next one, and if they don't have to blow both of them to get a convincing team fight victory, they can, I don't know, kind of stagger their cooldowns and make it to where they're reliant, oh my goodness, how much they rely on those big cooldowns is lessened, since they don't have to use both of them at the same time.
Yeah, having one cooldown up at any given time is going to mean that they won't outright lose the fight. In order to take such a crushing victory, normally you would expect the usage of 2 ultimates, but last time I think is the exception, one of the exceptions, an exception that we're probably not going to be seeing again, although I could be eating my words very quickly. They're not going to stop the pressure, MVP. They're going to smoke up. Dubu is smoked up, is going to be revealed by the Sand King. I think they both saw each other. The Observer Ward there, they're not going to find any blood up on the top lane, or at least they shouldn't. Genysis should just be falling back here, knowing that the Brewmaster ultimate should be refreshed by now. They're going to try to counter push over in mid. Raji was also hit with that smoke, is ready with the Tidehunter Ravage, and they're going to jump in. Ravage onto 2, spill damage, not going to hit onto Vectus, but immediately the Invoker dies. Now onto Vectus they go. He runs out of mana. He tread switches away from Reincarnation mana. I was pretty sure he had it, but he dies anyway. Up on top lane, they're going to get initiation onto Dubu. Mystic Flare is there. Death Ward is there in return, though. It's going to be a 1-for-1 support trade. And that should just about be the end of it, but that's still a 3-for-1 overall in favor of MVP.
And honestly, I think that 1-for-1 support trade is favoring MVP, since the Sand King is saving up for the Blink Dagger, and although it's nice to have items on your Venge, you don't really need them. Venge has enough levels to already have an impact inside mid. Raji and the Tidehunter continue the pressure onto the tier 2, but are going to be forced back. Big wins for MVP across the map. Not much else to really talk about. Wraith King, if he used his reincarnation there, I think it would have been procced anyway, so I'm okay with him tread switching away. But now they're going to lose Roshan with Medallion Gush as well as Meld, and if Venge was here, the Wave of Terror, Roshan sitting at a minus almost 20 armor, it's ridiculous. They'll be able to take it very quickly.
And MVP, that last fight, they used the Tidehunter Ravage, however, they did not use the Brewmaster split. They're finding themselves in situations where their team fighting ultimates are being staggered. Sunbi is going to spread out the entirety of the enemy. Roshan, though, already claimed by Raji as the split does come out. They're going to Stampede, try to charge forward, try to charge back at the same exact time. Vectus is going to have his reincarnation blown right here. He does have the mana this time. Burst Strike onto Jubei is going to kill off the Tidehunter, but doesn't have Ravage, not that relevant right now. The Brewmaster zoning out 3-4 heroes, while the rest of the heroes of MVP are working down Vectus. They will get the kill. Now another clap onto Andy, as well as they're going to kill off the Centaur with the cast bouncing through. They're going to chain stun and kill off the Scarith Mage as well. Now Nana is going to be trying to run away. He does not have any great form of escape, i.e. Ghost Walk, and now with the blink forward from Sunbi, he is going to get the clap. Magic Missile onto Nana. That's going to be a 4-for-1 trade, and it looks like the Sand King, though he will escape, is going to be the only one to escape. That was pretty much the perfect fight for MVP, using Brewmaster to zone out 4 heroes. It probably doesn't get much better than that, and they don't have Ravage. They don't need Ravage. Ravage will be up in 20 seconds, though, when the Brewmaster ultimate is down. It's working out so well for MVP, these ultimate cooldown timers.
It really is. They're playing around it a lot better than I thought they would. Usually when you look at these big cooldowns, it's like, oh, they might win a fight, but then again, the next fight might not go so well. But, I don't know, they're just perfectly juggling it back and forth, finding really great openings, and they're starting the snowball very heavily. Currently 4,500 gold in their favor, and similar in the experience. I'm not sure exactly how they're coordinating this, but I don't know, just the ability of this team to play around those cooldowns is very impressive. Almost a BKB on the Templar Assassin, and once they have that, pushing into tier 2s is going to be pretty easy with Ravage up as well.
This Templar Assassin is doing a hell of a lot of damage. As far as net worth is concerned, she is at the top. And even though she was up against a dual lane situation, having 9 kill participations is certainly going to help dig you out from that hole. And now she has the Asha. BKB is very soon incoming. Is it completed yet? No, not just yet. Courier, not with that item. But you know what? They don't really need that because they have the AoE stun of the Ravage. As long as the Templar Assassin doesn't get too close to the fight too quickly, she should be fine. And she's already level 12, so her side blades are going to be pretty long, and she will be able to last hit, or right click in from a pretty nice safe distance. MVP, they're going to go for a pretty secure push over in mid. Sand King's Blink Dagger is going to mean that Genysis have a chance at defending this, but they know that Ravage is up. They should know that Split is up as well. Fighting into that at any point in the game is going to be so tough.
It really is, and they look like they want to take this fight, but blinking the backlines by Sunbi is going to be silenced up. Burrow struck inside the Mystic Floor, dropped down before he could get off that split, but it's not going to save the Wraith King as he's brought down by the Vengeful Spirit Wave. Tier 2 tower, it's going to be a core for a core, but MVP getting the beneficial tower trade. Attempted deny coming out for the Invoker is going to fail as Raji gets that tower destruction.
That Stampede down from Genysis, not the highest cooldown skill, but MVP haven't used any ultimates that are relevant right now, and they're going to, well, decide to go top, decide to go bottom. I think if they all just went down towards the bottom lane, this tier 2 tower could be easy pickings for them, given the fact that they could blink in with the Brewmaster, who will be alive by then, and then have the Ravage as well, and there's no way for Genysis to disengage, at least not for another minute. It seems like they're going to change their minds, though, and just farm up the enemy jungle, get a little bit more gold away from the enemy. That's fine as well, but, man, 7-14 MVP doing pretty well for themselves, and as far as Genysis' ways of coming back from this one, well, I think the Wraith King just needs more farm, first of all. He has pretty much nothing, and Blink Dagger on Sand King is going to be their best bet.
Yeah, it really is about that Wraith King, and my goodness, it doesn't look like he's a core farmer at this point. A support Wraith King would probably have about the same amount in a good game, or even in a mediocre game, but Wraith King 0, 4, and 2 just hasn't been involved in much anything except for his own demise.
Well, bottom lane, Bryant. He's going to channel that Epicenter, but Jubei is going to smell something coming. Epicenter hitting 0 people. Got to get that creep farm, man. 3 CS for an Epicenter. Fortunately, is not quite good enough for this hanking. I don't know how Jubei saw that one coming, but he did apparently, and now he's going to have some backup from the rest of his team. There's 2 heroes from MVP up towards top, 3 down towards bottom. This is probably the best case scenario for Genysis. MVP, they really should not be making a play like this, and it looks like they will be falling back in time, realizing that, hey, we are all around the map. We should not be like this. Bottom lane is definitely a fight that Genysis cannot take. Top lane, though, those heroes are easy picking should they have stayed.
Definitely, but then again, MVP should be able to put a lot of pressure, if not just outright take this tier 2, with the power of Split and Ravage. Genysis will need to commit pretty much everything to fight just these 2 heroes, and not even to mention the Death Ward coming out from Not Still. Burrow Strike onto Sunbeam, drop a Sunstrike onto his head. He does have the split, but he can't get it off. The Ravage comes out, but not the follow-up. The Death Ward is being channeled. Bryant dropping pretty darn low, as is the Centaur, but not low enough. Nuts 2 points up that Maledict. Bryant might end up falling. It's not going to happen unless they get a little bit more damage inside a corner. Jubei is going to be jumped and will be brought down. They'll kill off the poor Sand King with a paralyzing cask. It's a 2 for 2, but a favorable trade for Genysis, especially since they drew out the Ravage cooldown.
Yeah, unfortunately, a little bit of a slow reaction time there from the Tidehunter. He should have sensed that something was coming, or you should be ready in those situations. If you're pushing a tier 2 tower like that, you have to expect the enemies to make some sort of play. So it was a little bit slow. I think he could have saved the Brewmaster, and he just needed to save him for 1 second, something like that. Then a split would have come out, and then no one would have died there for MVP. Instead, they ended up losing 2 heroes because of that slow reaction time. Though they do take a tower up on the top lane, they are going to be able to assemble down towards bottom and apply a little bit more pressure there, assuming their Brewmaster doesn't get silenced. So they should be pretty much fine to keep on going. But Genysis taking like small engagements where they have the jump and they are able to snipe out 1 hero immediately, that's their best bet. And now the Blink Dagger on Centaur is up, they're going to be able to do that so much easier moving forward. And this is going to be maybe the tier 2 tower dropping, but Bryant this time will have an Epicenter, or maybe not. Tower is taking way too much damage, it will be destroyed. And MVP, they have now taken every single outer tower of the Genysis side. Breaking high ground with these ultimates, very possible, and they just have to worry about their positioning.
Definitely. Tidehunter Ravage still on cooldown for about 50 seconds, and they might have to wait for the next Roshan. But they probably can take it. Speaking of Roshan, the Aegis was reclaimed about a minute ago or so. Yeah, so they're not going to have that available for quite some time, but they can pretty comfortably wait. By that time, they'll have Raji picking up his next item. I don't think you finish up the Mantis style here, but maybe you do up against the Scarlet Mage. It's not the worst. Inside the jungle, they find themselves a Witch Doctor and Stampede to disengage. It is going to be a clean disengage as well, as Bryant is going to be able to make it out from Sunbi. Although he's thinking about coming back in with the Blink Burrow Strike, it's actually the Vengeful Spirit to be caught out by this Invoker. Didn't actually see that happen, but it's going to be a pretty easy kill.
That's what happens if you're MVP and you start splitting up. And these 2 support heroes, they're powerful, but they're not self-sufficient levels of powerful. They're not exactly a Scarlet Mage who, if you run into someone, you can obliterate them before they have a chance to react. MVP, they have to be rolling as a 5-man squad. That's where their power comes from, in the fact that Tidehunter and Brewmaster, pretty much no matter what happens, will be able to back you up, if not completely bail you out, if you get into a little bit of trouble with a Ravage or a Split. Templar Assassin will be able to 2-shot people, and that's usually pretty good backup as well. So the supports of MVP getting a little bit out of position right there, and right now they're just waiting for Roshan, so it's kind of understandable that they're going to be running every which way, just trying to look for a position to do something, maybe drop some wards or something like that. But Roshan is going to be spawning in a very long time, 2 minutes. respawn is one of the longer ones, and it's going to be MVP sitting back kind of uncomfortably waiting for that Aegis. I really think that this is probably their best bet, waiting for the Aegis, but they really are getting kind of screwed over by the RNG of the game. If it was 0-second respawn, then they could be knocking at high ground of the Genysis side very, very quickly and looking to end the game a lot sooner.
Yeah. Raji, however, by that time, when Roshan's up, we'll have a Desolator completed, and Wraith King just isn't comparable when it comes to farm. He has a 22-minute Maelstrom, but that just doesn't cut it. Vexus needs more items, and honestly with his build, I don't see that happening anytime soon. Wraith King, not the fastest of farmers, even if you go for a Maelstrom.
And it's going to be an incredibly late item as well, like 22 minutes. Man, that's not where you want to be as a core Wraith King. If he was a support Wraith King, and for all intents and purposes, he is pretty much a support Wraith King at this point, that's fine, but yeah, I don't really know. He needs a little bit more than that. The ultimates of Genysis, they're going to be having to hold so much weight, and they're going to try to go for a kill up towards top. Sunbi, defending this by himself, will get burrow struck. Silence might come in a little bit too late. Epicenter is there, and the silence will come in just in time. Sunbi down. 2 TPs coming in. It's going to be Dubu and Nuts. They cannot do anything against this, especially up against the disengage of Stampede. Brewmaster getting jumped, and MVP, though they are still sitting at a pretty large advantage right now, getting picked off like this is going to drastically shrink that advantage, especially since Nuts and Dubu are still up on this top lane. They do not want to be there.
For sure. With a Blinking Centaur and Blinking Sand King, you need to be so careful, especially if you're these two heroes. MVP, they are going to have that Roshan respawn as well as Brewmaster respawn coinciding pretty nicely for them, and they'll have all of their ultimates, so going for Roshan is going to be pretty easy. We've already seen the minus armor they're actually able to pump out into Roche, and it's only gotten worse with 7 minus armor from the Templar Assassin and now a maxed out Gush, or close to be maxed out Gush.
So Roshan is going to not be lasting long at all. He's now up, and MVP certainly know about that. Templar Assassin doing her job there. The Genysis side, I think they probably cannot crash this, mostly because they can't get there in time. Roshan is going to be long dead by the time they actually mobilize and get there. Assuming MVP get in there with all their minus armor. They're not in there with all their minus armor, however. They don't have the medallion working, nor do they have the Gush working on the Roshan. They're going to be positioning everyone else rather defensively around the pit, but with no epicenter, it's just going to be such a sketchy fight from Genysis. It's probably better if they just farm up and ignore this. It's too late anyway.
Yeah, it is. That Roshan was not going to last very long, and with all of their ultimates, with an Aegis on the Templar Assassin, the only logical move for Genysis, or for MVP, is to push down the lane and go for high ground. I don't think there's really going to be a better time at this point. The Blink on Centaur is going to be disruptive, as is the Blink on SK, but they're still going to be running with a whole lot of teamfight control inside this next fight, and they don't have to completely team wipe the enemy team to still put a lot of damage in these structures, if not outright take racks. It's going to be Genysis's attempt at defending. They'll pop the pipe, jump into the backlines with the Tidehunter. Ravages, it only catches out one, but that one's Bryant, and now their team fight is so much sketchier. They're going to drop the Primal Split as well, and I'd like to see him just throw these Brewlings onto the sidelines and maybe cyclone up a couple of heroes, but 2-3 towers is already going to be dropped incredibly low. They use both of their ultimates for only a Sand King, but it's still probably enough for them to secure a lane of barracks.
It's the terrible Ravage, a terrible split, and as you said, it might just be enough regardless, because do still have the Aegis working on Raji. He has a BKB. They don't have a pipe for another 30 seconds, but if Sunbi didn't use his split right there, this could be so different right now for MVP. They're going to jump in with Andy. Stampede as well. 2 hits on that stomp, and with the Deafening Blast coming through, the Witch Doctor will take a fall. However, BKB now up on Raji, and Andy taking so much damage. One more Urn Charge will kill him off. In the meantime, the rest of the Strength Heroes beat down the Wraith King. That's his reincarnation down. And now 1, 2, 3, and a Magic Missile. That's going to be his death. Short Tornado, not going to be enough. Andy, buying back into this game, is going to very quickly be surrounded by enemies, and he's going to take a quick fall. The Invoker also getting a little bit too close for comfort. Here comes Bryant with an Epicenter, but the pipe is now up. It's not going to be enough to save the Brewmaster, however, it will block a lot of damage from the Tidehunter. 2 heroes are down on either side. The Templar Assassin still stands, and she's the real dangerous one because she's going to be the one doing the damage to these Raxes, and said Raxes are still going to fall. Nana is going to try to approach this with his Forge Spirits. Bryant still off to the side. Best case scenario, they pick off the Aegis of Raji, and they will try to go in for that immediately with the Skywrath Mage ulti. The Aegis is down on the Templar Assassin, but still it's another 10 seconds until the Wraith King is back up. Raji's going to walk away from this one just fine, unless Genysis really wants to pursue this one. Burrow Strike is going to connect onto 2. Jubei, some reason, hugging Raji there. Should not be doing that. Range Rax is going to survive, but whenever you take melee, range is soon to fall. For all intents and purposes, MVP, even with 2 terrible ultimates, still get what they came for.
For sure, and now it's a lot easier to break the high ground in the second lanes. Just wait for that Ravage cooldown, wait for the split, and hopefully this time they connect onto more than one hero. In fact, that split really didn't do much of anything. Put a little bit of damage in that tier 3, but definitely not enough to warrant the cooldown spent. Raji is also going to be finishing up a new major item with 4,300 gold into the bank, and you're also sitting on a decent amount of gold on the likes of the Tidehunter. After going for the pipe, going for Refresher is a little bit harder since he just doesn't really have the mana to sustain that with only 780. If you pop the pipe and your double Ravages, I'm not even sure if you have enough for that at level 16 ultimate. So we'll just have to see what the item choice is for all of these heroes, but for now, MVP, they're primed for another one team fight. They were hard-pressed to bring down Raji once, and they only just did that at the end of the fight. They would have lost their barracks even without an Aegis.
And now MVP, they have all their ultimates back. Hopefully they're not going to just blindly jump up there. This time they have a little bit of observer ward vision in the enemy base, so they should know about where to ravage, about where to jump in for splitting. They're going to go in anyway. Raji has a BKB still at 9 seconds, so he's going to be just fine doing that. And Wraith King is nowhere near here. They're going to jump in first for Nana Brewmaster. Not going to fully engage in this one just yet, but he's doing a lot of free damage that the Invoker really can't deal with. Response Burrow Strike from Bryant, but swap out from Dubu. A little bit premature, maybe, so that ultimate is now down, but the racks are still falling. Somebody's going to get jumped upon. Bet they wish they had a split right about now, or a swap right about now. They're going to take down the Brewmaster, but now the Ravage is going to connect this time onto everyone. Raji with the BKB, taking no damage from anything right now as Vectus is the one to fall. It's going to be Andy getting 2-shot by Raji following. The Raxes are now down. Magic Missile to Vectus in the meantime. Burrow Strike from Bryant landing onto 3 heroes. Beautifully done, but it's just not enough because the rest of his team has no follow-up. Vectus is going to lose his life for real now, as well as Scarith Mage. The range Raxes are soon to fall. This is going to be 2 lanes now in favor, and even though Bryant with the Sand King play is landing so many value Burrow Strikes, Genysis don't have enough gas in the tank. They're going to be forced to tap out.
I really like the lineup coming out from Genysis, but it just didn't work out for them. MVP were playing around those cooldowns so wonderfully in the early game. Once they got them, it was a switch, and it turned on in a very big fashion. They used one split for a 5-man wipe, the Ravage securing themselves another fight, and then the next split into the Roshan pit. Just, I don't know, surgical execution coming out from MVP, and this is a best of 3, so Genysis still have a chance to come back, but that was a really impressive performance coming out in Game 1 from MVP.
Yeah, guys, we'll be right back for game number 2. We'll see if MVP Hot 6 can take it in a 2-game sweep, or if Genysis will be able to fight back.